Thank you very much. I am going to say one thing. Y'all look a lot better than them guys and gals I used to drink with, and that ain't no lie. That's the truth, man. I must have hung out with some rough people. But I'm Tommy Handicap, recovered alcoholic, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. And if my camera does that, I'm going to cut it off again. But I really like these meetings. Thursday night was awesome meeting, wasn't it? Great meeting last Trudge. But the there's my camera again. Anyway, my home group is New London, North Carolina. We're about 40, 50 miles east of Charlotte out in the country. It's a big book step study meeting. Going on 10 years old. My sobriety date's August the 6th of 1988. And I'm just tickled to death, like I say, to be of service, to be here. And I got a great life today. Um, I didn't used to have a great life. Like everybody else, my life is pretty bad. I got a little timer going. I'm going to attempt to do some self-discipline here. We all know how that works sometimes for alcoholics. But I'll tell you something, y'all. I grew up here in North Carolina, and we were dirt poor people. I mean, we didn't have electricity, didn't have water to the old one-room house we lived in for a long time. But then one day my dad got some electricity out there, then we got a well. Oh, man, it was nice. And but we worked hard. It developed in me a great work ethic just to do what we had to do to get by in them days, and it stuck with me all my life. And today I wouldn't trade those poor times for nothing. I mean, I absolutely love them today, but I used to hate them. But see, AA's turned my attitude around where I could see the good in it. See, my parents were doing the best they could. But there was no drinking around my house at one time. My dad was a Methodist preacher, and before World War II come along, and then his daddy was a Methodist preacher, and I made sure I was not going to be a Methodist preacher because it stopped with my dad, you know what I mean? So in the summer of 1969, I was 14 and a half years old, and I wasn't doing too good. I was lost all my self-confidence. I was not doing good. Uh, I'd seen all these older boys up here, little town of Locust, riding around in their old hot rods, drinking beer, and had a girl with them, most of them, and they had something I wanted. They was having fun, and I was not having fun. So we got our money together, old Marvin and John and me, three of us boys. And one of them boys talked this fellow to take us 30 miles up the road to wet county because we lived in a dry county. And we pulled all our money, give him all our money. He took us up there, put $2 worth of gas in his car, bought himself a 6-pack of beer, bought us a pack of cigarettes and a 6-pack of 16-ounce Budweisers. And buddy, I want you to know, we got back that old skating rink where we was hanging out, and we run out behind that building. We all drank them 2 beers apiece and got slapped drunk. First time in my life I'd ever caught a buzz. I used to wonder why people drank, but I knew that night why people drank alcohol. My whole world changed that night. The lights looked brighter. I felt fine. Whatever was in me was like gone. I felt comfortable talking to all the girls around there. And Bill said his story somewhere in there. It says he felt like he was part of life. And for that night, I felt like I was part of life, and I loved it. Had a great time. And we had such a good time. We tried to do it every Saturday night we could. And then every Friday night and then Sundays. And then it got to where it's all weekend thing. And we would find a way to get something to drink, and none of us had a license or a car. We'd hitchhike. We'd hitchhike 30 miles if we had to. But we found a store up there that would actually sell it to one of us boys. We wasn't even 16-year-old then, but I was pretty tall for my age. They sell it to me. But that got to be our thing, drinking. And I drank hard as I could drink. Then I got to doing the drugs hard as I could drug for 20 years, right at 20 years. And my life was absolutely ruined. I started off a fairly decent kid. Yeah, I had a few problems, but wasn't nothing like what I experienced along the way. During those 20 years I drank, I bounced around, man. I bounced around from bar to bar, from both bootleg joint, from jail to jail. And when I couldn't find a gal to have me too long because they didn't want somebody to stay drunk all the time, not the ones around here didn't. And so my life was really a wreck. I started getting thrown in jail when I was 15. I quit school when I was 16. As soon as I got my driver's license, I had to go because there's better things waiting on me. That was get a job, take the money, and drink. And that's what I done. We'd drink all weekend. Then we got doing drugs. We'd do them too. And that was the story of my life. It just kept getting worse. We go out and try to find some gals, but we always had to get something to drink first. And drinking was the main part of my life. I believe when I was 17 years old, I crossed that invisible line that we do talk about in AA, and my mom and dad, I'd called in when I get thrown in jail and they'd come get me out. She wanted to know what happened, and I'd always tell her. She'd blame it on old John, or she'd blame it on JD, or she'd blame it on one of the other boys. Says, I don't want you hanging around with them because they're a bad influence on you. I said, they sure are, Mom. I ain't hanging around with them boys no more, Week later, I said, hey, John, come on. Let's go get some beer, man. I was big. It scares the rest of them. But yeah, she couldn't believe that her boy was actually doing all that stuff. When I was 21, I got in so much trouble, I thought I was supposed to go to youthful offender camp or prison or something, and I took off to Florida, Jacksonville Beach, stayed down there 6-8 months. Wasn't long, I got thrown in jail there. Sat in jail 30 days, thought I never going to get out. I got out and I took off to Ohio, hid out up there. And I was just running, taking me with me, running from me and running from whatever I was, And the same thing happened. I ended up in jail there and then got sent back to Florida because of skip court down there. Back and forth, always something, And I would, when I get out of jail, I would just drink. I was just staying drunk all the time. I couldn't stand life, couldn't deal with life. There was no power greater than myself in my life but booze, I guess, herself. And in 76, I come back to North Carolina and quit going to jail. That was it. I quit doing that stuff and just drank all the time. I got to where from 76, 79, I could not stay sober. I'd pass out drunk 3 times a week, probably, or 4, but I was drunk the rest of the time. But other times I just drank where I was passing out. 79, I'd met this little 16-year-old girl and I was 24-year-old in the spring of 79. And my mom was sick with cancer. And I was really a source of embarrassment and shame for my mom and daddy. I was, the way I done, the way I acted, the way I lied to her and him and cheated and stole from them and all that. But my mom got sick with cancer and died, and that really hit me hard, and I didn't know what to do. I got to thinking maybe I need to straighten up. So maybe I need to find me a little gal and get married. So 6 months later, y'all know what happened. Me and that little gal got married, right? She thought she could fix me, and she couldn't. And the next 9 years, her life went crazy. She went crazy. And she left me 3 times because I was out drinking and drugging, spending money on people I shouldn't have been spending on, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. Y'all can fill in the blanks, you know what I mean? I was not a good man, not a good husband, But she got violent. She got thinking it was her fault that I drank the way I drank. She would get violent and jump on me. She tried to beat me to death. And when she get mad, she would sling things. If a frying pan was there, look out, here it comes. If there's an ashtray, good God, she'd have thrown it at me. But I'm glad she didn't have no hand grenades, y'all. I'm telling you, she'd have really messed me up. But she gave me a black eye before and bruised me up. And she bruised herself up and pulled guns, started pulling guns out. I didn't know what was going on with that woman, except she was crazy. She was going crazy. And it was all because she was living with me. And when she get like that, I get gone. I go stay gone a while. I get at a bootleg joint and drink a while or whatever. But and then when I go home, there she goes again, But she around, I think it was 87, she started going to Al-Anon. And I didn't know what Al-Anon was, but she said she'd had enough of this. She was going to go try to get better, And I didn't appreciate the fact she's going to Al-Anon. Then she got one of them Al-Anon sponsors without asking me about it. Oh, that really made me mad. I had to go off and get drunk again. And boy, she wasn't asking me nothing. She was doing it, going off and getting better and changing. And what she was doing was actually getting well. And I was out there drunk as a skunk trying to figure out what are these people doing? And I was getting sicker and sicker. And I got to the point where I don't know, man. I just can't see no reason to live no more. They'd be better off without me, And I had thought about suicide. But in 87, I went to a meeting. I'd been out on the binge, booze and cocaine. And I'd been out on the binge, and I went to a meeting that Friday night. And it was a pretty good meeting. I wasn't ready for y'all, though. I wasn't doing none of them steps I seen on the wall. I wasn't no way I was going to do that 3rd step, 5th step, 9th step, none of that stuff. But for some reason, I picked up one of them white chips they give out, and I kept going back for a year. I'd go back till I couldn't stand it, and I'd get to drinking. And I usually couldn't drink long. Then I'd go back to AA. So I couldn't stand it either way I went. And I tinkered with them first 3 steps a little bit. Maybe that's about as far as it went. I even got a sponsor. Y'all made me mad at a meeting one night, and I got a sponsor. But we didn't have no big book meetings down here then. It was just discussion meetings and speaker meetings. And I'd have never got a sponsor. The whole group had made me mad that night, so I ran off and got one just to spite him, I guess. But he stayed my sponsor for quite a while. And in the summer of 1988, I had a big chip on my shoulder. I'd had enough of y'all. I'd had enough of my wife. I'd had enough of everything. And I was going to prove something, I guess, to myself or to the world. I was not an alcoholic. Because in that meeting, we had actually read in the book, step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. But that's what I did. I stepped over to the nearest bar room or convenience store when I got off work, bought 2 beers, drank them all going home, went home, cut my grass, everything's fine, didn't drink nothing else. And I thought I won that battle, man. They see, I'm not alcoholic. I only drank 2. Next day, I went back in there, got 2 more, drank them down quick as I could. Next thing you know, 3 or 4 days went by, and I'd been drunk the whole time. And I sat up on the side of that bed that morning, and I could see me in a way I never could see me before. I could see me, I was going to die, and I'm going to die if I keep drinking. I can't stop drinking, you know. And I knew I was going to drink again. That's what got me. I knew I could not possibly stop myself from picking up that drink. I knew I was going to die. And I got to thinking, well, them people in AA are sober. Some of them are actually happy. I'm going to go back there and do what they tell me. I'm going to do it if it means just not picking up that drink. And I went back, you know, on 6th of August, got me a white chip and talked to their sponsor, and I started listening to what y'all had to say. And man, y'all started making more sense to me than I ever seen in my life. I loved it, man. I loved it. And I started just grasping whatever y'all had to say. I just held on to it and grasped it, you know, and because y'all helped me stay sober, helped me live, you know, one day at a time. I'm going to tell you something, man, when this sponsor I had was not one like you have today or like a big book sponsor. He just did call me before you take a drink and all these little things like that. And he didn't sit down with me with the steps. I had to fumble my way through them best I could, you know, but I done the best I could. I really did at that time. And I was very confused, and my language was so dirty. Almost every sentence come out of my mouth full of cuss words. There's a lady in the meeting one day said, Tommy, we got to teach you how to talk. You need to leave that gutter talk at me, gutter where it belongs. Man, I got mad at that woman. Naturally, she is on my resentment list, but she was telling the truth. Because I did. I was so dirty and nasty on the outside and dirty and nasty on the inside. I don't see how that group stood me. You know, on the inside, I was just full of anger and hate and fear and terror and shame and all this stuff y'all know what about, you know. And I didn't know what to do, you know. And I was about to fly off the handle and get drunk one day. And I've been working on them steps pretty much by myself. And I wrote that 4-step, 90-something resentments. I forget how many fears. I actually done a little bit on the sex inventory. And I was about to fly off the handle. And the little fella I know I worked with that went to A named Little John said, Tommy, you about to go off and get drunk. Boy, you better go find somebody to do that 5th step with. He said, well, if you do it with your sponsor, every time you see him, you'll know he knows. Oh, my God, I wish he hadn't said that. I wish he did. So he told him about this Catholic priest named Father Benny. And I went to see Father Benny, and I sat there. And I wasn't going to do no 5th step. I was just kind of going to test this guy out, you know. But I sat there about, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours talking, carrying on. And he wanted me to just tell him what actually was bothering me, you know. And I was about, I guess I was about done, but I was feeling a tad bit of relief. And then this little voice went off my head, says, Tommy, why don't you just tell Father Benny everything? I remember looking at him and said, Father Benny, you know what's really troubling me? He said, what's that, Tommy? And I told him all those deep, dark secrets I didn't want nobody to find out. All the skeletons in the closet. I told him about all that stuff I knew. If another man would find out, it would be the end of me, you know. Told him everything. And I had an experience that was absolutely out of this world. The unexpected happened to me. He, instead of ridiculing me, he said, well, Tommy, you wasn't so bad. I've heard a lot worse than that. And I'm thinking, what? What do you mean? I'm the worst human being ever walked the earth, I feel like. And you tell me, well, I didn't tell him that. He said, Tommy, you know, when you done those things, that was your decision. That was your choices there. It wasn't God's will. He said, Tommy, God loves you. And he just wants you to stay sober, be happy, and go out there in that world and be all you can be. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, nobody's never told me stuff like that before. You know, I could not believe the encouragement that man, love that man give me out there, and I never forgot it. Every time I get the chance, I try to pass that on to other people, because I know how we alcoholics can be filled with guilt and shame and stuff and think we are nothing. But we ain't, you know. There's one that's got the power to make something out of us. But anyway, I left there that day, and them promises had come true in step 5 in the big book, in the middle of the page, and I can't tell you right off the bat what page number it is. But it's like all them fears started leaving me, and I felt something I never felt in my life. I think it was awesome. It was great, and I felt free. You know, I went out there that day, felt like I was a new man walking on there. And I bounced around AA for 20 years, and busy in the group doing service work, GSR 17 years, or GSR and alternate, whatever. I said all kinds of service position at 17 years involved in all that. But yeah, I started recognizing I had a lot of problems, and these problems was like depression, fear, anger, and guilt and stuff, and those old defects of character. I started noticing that stuff. And I kept thinking, there's got to be more sobriety than what I got. Man, here I am, 17, 18, 19 years sober, man. There's got to be something else. I got to be missing something. There's got to be more of this God thing, what I have now. And I'm telling you, man, I just didn't know what to do. So I kept praying. And I had a feeling down inside that the solution lay outside of my usual meetings that I went to and the usual people I hung out with. And I started searching, and I looked online, and I noticed over in Charlotte, there's a big book group called a Big Book Step Study group. Well, I read about them. I thought, ain't no way I'm going over there. They're crazy. Not that much. I want to tell you one thing right now. You know what? After I prayed, you know what God had me do, don't you? 6 months later, I walked in that meeting with a big book, and I sat down and shut up and I listened. And it didn't take me long to realize I couldn't say nothing, because they always, you know, had something I wanted, I needed, and I wanted. You know what I mean? And I mean, the little girl sitting beside me, 3 years sober, and I was 20. She said some stuff there that I knew true, but I could not share that stuff. And they had something about them. It's like they were fearless. You know, there was conflict. There was a power in that room like I'd never seen before. And I remember thinking, wow, I've been missing this for a long time. This is what old time real AA is about, man. Holy smoke, I got to have some more of this. So I stayed so excited that was on a Monday. That Thursday, I was still excited about it. I said, I ain't never going back to them other meetings, man. You know, but I went to that meeting on and off for a year, and I finally got the guts up, because I had to think this thing through, and I'm a slow thinker, y'all. So about a year later, I asked a guy named Jeff to be my sponsor. And we got together. He said, we'll have a meeting and talk about it. I was kind of hoping he'd just give me a yeah right then or a no, but no, we had to have a meeting. He said, why are we having this meeting, Tommy? And he knew. And what it boiled down to, my defects of character was eating me alive. They was eating me alive. And we had a little talk. He said, Tommy, I'll sponsor you, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to meet every week. I'll give you some assignment in the book that my sponsor give me, and you do it. And when you get together in a week, and we'll go over it. You need to spend a half hour to an hour a day on it. And you need to pray this prayer before you open that big book up or open your notebook to write. And that is, God, please have me do this work the way you want me to do it. Please show me the truth about myself. Thank you. And I noticed he started saying thank you. And that got me saying thank you. Instead, I don't do me amens no more, y'all. I do a lot of thank yous, you know. I need it. I need to thank God for things. We started working on this stuff, and it wasn't long. I realized I didn't know nothing about that book. And we started working. My life started changing. I kept praying. Then go home, be a service more to my wife, go to meetings, be quiet, Tommy, and listen. That's what I told myself. Just be quiet and listen, Tommy. I kept doing that work, and my life started changing. My wife started noticing a little something. And you know, in that first step, you know, I knew I didn't have defense against that first drink, but I understood the unmanageability of my life more, and I understood the insanity of it. I also understood something, and it took me a little bit for this to really get in my head. sponsor asked me one day what the most spiritual thing I ever done in my life was. I couldn't answer that question. He said, it's not step 3 or 7 or 11, I believe. He said, I believe it's when we turn our back on self and we turn our back on booze and drugs and sex and all that stuff and start looking for that higher power. He said, I believe that's the most spiritual thing we can possibly do. Man, boy, did he rock my world. I thought about that, and I believe you got a good point there. And we did the third step together, and he sent me home before we done that third step because he was one of these guys. If that book said it's a requirement, you better meet it, or we can't meet till you do. We're just wasting our time. Apparently, I wasn't convinced about this little any life run on self-will deal, right? So he sent me home. A week or two later, I called him up, told him I was convinced. We discussed it, went on, got step 3 done. He got me started writing my. He gave me 15 minutes after we done the third step at his house to start making out my grudge list, and I had 140 names in 15 minutes wrote on that list. And here I was, like running around 20 years sober, and I had a lot more resentments than that. So I kept doing all my 4-step, my first 3 columns, and then done my prayed for every one of them, over 500 people on my resentment list, on my knees. I prayed the sick man's prayer for each one individually. And things started happening, miracles started happening in my life. Those resentments started falling away, and it was incredible. I started feeling a different attitude towards all them people, man. There's like 2 or 3 there I had to do a little extra work on, but it was incredible, man. I mean, I tell people I grew like a spiritual weed, But also in the third column in the book, it says fear in parentheses. Well, I never paid no attention to that before because I didn't know nothing about it. Didn't know if we were supposed to identify it or not. But when I done my turnarounds, one of the questions was identify the fear, pray and ask God to show you the truth. Then I moved to my fear inventory, and this is what really shocked me too. The 3 questions. He gave me 3 questions. Basically, why do I have this fear? Try to remember the first time, Tommy, you had this fear, but I always pray first. And he said, trust God. You just operate the pencil. You don't have to do nothing else. God will put in your mind what he wants you to put on paper. So what I did was I followed his directions. And when the fears were done, what I saw was each and every one of my fears started in my childhood. And as I grew older, they manifested themselves in various ways in my life. I did not see any new fears when I was a grown man. And what happened was I still had the mind of a child in some ways because I'd never outgrown them fears. A big part of my brain was like a childlike mind. And I might look like a grown man on the outside, but on the inside, I was highly immature. And I just followed directions in the book, And that third question was, how might this have been different if I had trusted and relied on God? And I prayed not the sick man's, but the fear of prayer for each and every one of them. And I called the fear by name. For me, that's making it personal, to own up to it, And that's what I did. I owned up to each and every one of them. And on my sex inventory, this is the one that got me. Well, not really. He says, Tommy, we make a list of about everything in step 4 so far. I said, that's right. He said, well, make a list of every time you ever had sex with a woman, a man, an animal, an object, or by yourself. I said, everything? He said, yep. If you tried to do it, wanted to do it, done it, would have done it, put it on your list. I said, you ain't leaving me no loopholes, are you, brother? He said, nope. But anyway, and we would meet at this coffee shop. And I go get me a cup of coffee because he always beat me there early. And I go back and sit at the table. He was sitting there reading my inventory. Man, you nosy. What he was doing was trying to show her I was doing something and making sure I was staying on track. See, he cared enough about me to do those things. And then I asked myself those questions. The big book has 9 questions, I think it is. But I saw where I'd been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking. I saw where I had harmed others. And he said, Tommy, put yourself on that list because you hurt yourself every single time you've done something like that. And that opened my eyes to a whole brand new world I didn't know existed. And that was the harms I'd done you women, especially. I harmed y'all horrible. It was god awful. And I had to put y'all on my 8-step men's list. And I had to write a sex ideal. I had the sick man's prayer for my resentments, had the fear prayer for the fear. So I wrote a sex ideal where I prayed for sanity. After I seen that sex inventory, I knew I was insane there. My God, there's no way a sane man could claim to have done all those things and claim to be sane. It was impossible. And then it got time we got all that done. I went to his house to read my fifth step. Told him, he says, he opened the door and said, "What are you doing here?" And he wouldn't let me in the house till I told him I was there on a life and death matter. He would not let me in that house. So I went there and we said a prayer and read all that stuff. Over 500 resentments. I think there's around 140 fears or over 100 fears and 146 things. That's probably close to 800 things I read to him. And he'd heard worse. Didn't bother him a bit, I mean, I read, we prayed, and I read. And then he said, we got done. He sent me home and to do step 6 and 7. And step 6 boiled down. First I had I sat right here at this table, almost where I'm sitting now, and sit here for that hour. He called it hour of grace. And think about them first 5 steps, make sure I didn't leave nothing out. And pray and thank God, he said, from the bottom of your heart, you know him better because you do. And I got on my knees right over here about 4 foot from where I'm sitting tonight. And I prayed, thank God, that I did know him a little better than I did before. And, those defects of character that I saw in my 4th step, did I think God could remove them? Did I want God to remove them? And you better believe I did. I was sick of me, Everybody was sick of me, probably. I know I was sick of me. God was probably sick of me. That's probably why he had me do it. But I said, yeah. And I thought, yeah, I do want God to remove those defects of character. Do I believe he'll do it, though? I thought, yeah, if he's got all power, he can do that. But what I didn't know was how he is going to do it, when he is going to do it, in what manner, what way, any of that stuff. All that had to come later. And I got on my knees and I prayed that 7-step prayer out of the big book. And here, we call that down here that's where we go to work for God. That's where we go to work for God, right there. And he said, call me when you do that, Tommy. And I called him. And he said, Tommy, when you get up off your knees out and you prayed that 7-step prayer, you step through that archway of free man. And you got the tools now to be free from the bondage of self. You're free from the bondage of self unless you held back on that inventory stuff. And I didn't. I let it all hang out, so to speak. I just done it all, But you know what? It's just great. It was great. And he got me in 10 and 11 quick as he could as I made out my 8-step men's list. And live 10 and 11 best I can, 84 through 88. And that's the key to me. That's the key to life for me today, in a way. That's what I focus my attention on today. If and my life has just got better. My wife and I are still together 43 years now, through all the madness. Thank God. And we got grandyoungers that's never seen granddaddy drunk or crazy acting like that, and that's been great. The kids were so little, they don't remember nothing about the drinking. I got a lot of blessings here. But to me, this AA today, yeah, it's about staying sober at the end of the day, but there's no way I'm going to stay sober if I don't stay sane. And that 7-step prayer, to me, is the miracle. To me, that's AA today. And you can look at it any way you want, but this is just how I look at it because it works real good to me. And this is my creator. I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as to go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. And so how am I, a guy like me that needed direction, how's he going to find direction to live something like that? And the only thing I can figure out is step 10 and step 11, page 84 through 88 shows me how to live that life today that God wants me to live. And when I get up and do that 84 through 88 and do it all day today or any day, I feel safe. I feel good. I feel like God's keeping me protected, I feel like a drink is just, it's not possible. I do. I really feel that way. God's got power. My power can't override his. I'm an alcoholic, sure, but he'll keep me safe and protected. Is his promise. He has fulfilled that promise in my life. And today, this higher power I call my creator is the central point of my life today. And I tell you what, I'm just glad one of my gratitude things is I'm glad that God loves me and God saw me laying down here in that old grass, drunk, passed out with wet pants, and said, I got to do something about that boy. He's going to die. And he sent people to help me. You know, he sent y'all. He'll send y'all to help people. He sent me to help people. Send us all to help people, man. Y'all really are a beautiful bunch. I wasn't lying a while ago when I said that. That bunch I hung out with was pretty rough, but y'all looking fantastic. I love you all. Thanks for letting me be of service.